Hey guys, what's up? It's Sunshine from Sunshine's Journey here on YouTube and also on Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook at Sunshine's Journey to 199 and Snapchat at SunshineCHI, so Sunshine Shy. So, as you guys know, if you've been following me for a really long time, I have been trying to get to 199 since about October 2011. So this fall, you guys, we are going on 6 years of literal ups and downs with my weight. In 2011, I was about, I had lost some weight from my highest weight of 391, and I had probably gotten down to about 350 or 340. I started walking, I started working at Curves, and I got down to 245 pounds, which was when I met my ex-fiance. You guys, I'm sure if you followed me for a long time, you know the story. We were together, and we started having some problems. I realized that he was cheating on me. We did the whole breakup, get back together thing, and in March of 2013, I was in Miami, and he was at home in Chicago. He had just been away on a business trip, and when I was in Miami, I got an email from him at 4 in the morning stating that it was over. He had moved out of the apartment, and I needed to find my own way home from the airport. Yeah, an email. I had a pity party for a few days, and then I realized, you know what, I'm not just going to let this ruin my life. I'm not going to wallow, and I got back at it. When we broke up, I had gained back over 100 pounds that I lost. I make no excuses for the fact that I am in charge of putting, you know, food in my body, and I was the one who wasn't exercising, and I was the one who wasn't committed. But that being said, it was a very tough time for me emotionally, you know, not just after we broke up, but during that relationship. He was extremely jealous, to the point that I had stopped making eye contact with strangers in public. You know, we could pass a man in a store, and I would, you know, you look in the general direction of someone, and he would literally be like, oh, who's that? You want to be with him? And it was just like, no, I made eye contact with someone that we passed. So, you know, I always try and psychoanalyze everything, and I always try and think about, you know, where did this behavior come from? And again, even though I was absolutely putting the food in my mouth and not exercising, I always wonder if, you know, part of it was, you know, maybe if I'm heavier, he won't be so jealous, and it won't be so hard to deal with. So it wasn't a great relationship to be in. It was probably, not probably, it was my first real relationship. It was my first longest relationship at the time. But again, I decided that I was not going to have a pity party, and I got right back at it. I was 365 pounds. You know, I had gained back 120 pounds throughout the course of that relationship, and, you know, you really feel, you know, not only like was the relationship a waste, but what a waste that I did for all of that hard work to lose the weight the first time. And you know, you have guilt and things that you could have done differently. I was very guilty. You know, as you guys know, my mom passed away in 2014, and I had a lot of guilt about that. You know, I moved to Chicago with my ex, and, you know, what if I would have stayed in Milwaukee and, you know, been able to spend more time with her? So we put all this pressure and all this stress and all this second guessing on ourselves, and, you know, that's hard to do anyway, but when you're trying to do it in the midst of weight loss, it's really tough. And I started my social media presence, I guess, if you will, initially on just Facebook to hold myself accountable. It was literally just to hold myself accountable. I had no idea that, you know, years down the road it would become what it has, and the community that it has, and the size that it has. And I didn't even get on Instagram until I think about like 4 years ago. I totally poo-pooed Instagram at first. I wasn't interested, but it was really on Instagram that I was able to connect with all of you guys and find this community. And while it has been absolutely amazing, it's hard, and I was having a conversation about this with a friend of mine who also has a large social media following, and you know, it's kind of one of those things where, and I'm not by any means, I am not at all saying that I'm a celebrity. I'm not saying I'm a celebrity, but it's kind of one of those things where, you know, stuff happens with celebrities and you're like, well, they asked for it, you know, they did it to themselves, you know, they gave up their privacy, and you know, this was what they wanted. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things that when you get a large social media following, you don't expect, just the littlest, tiniest things can change. And especially when you're trying to be on a weight loss journey, it adds so much more pressure and so much more stress. It's great. I'm not complaining at all. I hope that no one watches this and they're like, oh, wow, Sunshine, like, you know, you have all these opportunities and you have sponsors now, and I am incredibly grateful for that. But even more importantly, I am so grateful for this community really just giving me my passion. You know, I first realized that I wanted to help women, and men, of course, but I really wanted to inspire women to never give up hope. And it doesn't matter where you came from, or what your situation is, or how much money you have, or how crazy your family is. And, you know, I've talked about this before. I really saw the best of both worlds growing up. You know, my dad was not an awesome person, but you know, my home at my dad's house was literally a house out of hoarders. You know, there were rooms that I never went in my entire childhood because they were filled with stuff, and there was a path in the living room, and you know, we didn't have a couch. We had, you know, for a while we had 2 old seats from an old movie theater because my dad was very eccentric, and that was his business. He dealt in movie memorabilia and comics and cartoons, and you know, he was friends with Mel Blanc, who was the voice of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Elmer Fudd and on. And Mel actually did our answering machine when I was a kid, so we had Porky Pig on our answering machine. So it was like we lived in this totally shitty house, but there was all this other weird stuff that went along with it. Like my dad, for a while, he was the manager of Fern Formica, who was the first munchkin to come out in The Wizard of Oz when Glenda calls them out. And I spent a summer at her house the summer before 8th grade. And, you know, so, you know, life at my dad's was crazy. We never had any food in the house. We would keep super weird hours. It wasn't unheard of for my dad to get us all in the car at 3 in the morning and say, hey, we're going to drive to Chicago to go get the best gyros. I mean, this was literally like, it was no structure, never knowing when we were going to eat again or what we were going to eat. And then at my mom's house, I really think that she tried to overcompensate, because she knew that we were going without at my dad's. And so that was where I really learned to overeat. You know, the fridge was full. The pantry was full. We would go out to eat all the time, and I would just stuff myself, you know, if I was going to be going back to my dad's, because I didn't know when I was going to get not only that kind of food again, but I didn't know when we were going to necessarily have a good meal again. So, you know, I really attribute that to where my my poor relationship with food came from. People say, how did you lose weight? You know, and it's eating less, exercising, and changing your relationship with food. And for a long time, and even now to an extent, I thought that I had it figured out. I thought, well, this is where my poor relationship with food came from. I completely recognize the fact that a lot of times when I am feeling impulsive and I want to eat something bad, I have to remind myself that you're a grown woman who can go get this food at any time. The food isn't going anywhere. You know, I don't need to be so impulsive and eat whatever I want to right this second. because I control that. I'm the adult now. I'm not that child anymore. So if you guys, I've made videos on YouTube before about that exact same thing. Settle down and realize that the food isn't going anywhere, and just kind of talk yourself through those cravings. But I don't think that I'm doing everything emotionally and mentally that I can for myself for this weight loss journey. I haven't gone, but I have been looking into not only Overeaters Anonymous, but also eating disorder recovery. I am a former bulimic, binge and purger, and that is really one of the big reasons that I stopped weighing in 2017. When I was doing weekly weigh-ins on Instagram, it would be so stressful and so triggering for me. Number one, it was stressful because I didn't want to let you guys down. If I had a gain, in the moment, and I can recognize it now better, but, for me, I was like, you can't gain, like, you're gonna be such a disappointment, and, again, like, with having this big social media following, it's a lot of pressure, and, the good so far, like, so vastly outweighs the bad. But there's so much pressure when you genuinely care about your audience, and you know that there's people who are just like you, who have been fighting and trying to get this weight off. And it's been so important to me this whole time to be a success story, not only for me but for you guys. Like, I truly want you guys to look at me when I've gotten there and say, if Sunshine can do it, so can I. Like, look what Sunshine has gone through. It's so similar to things that I've gone through. Again, I had a crazy childhood. I lost both of my parents tragically, literally one right after another. I lost my dad on Thanksgiving of 2014, and we buried his ashes in December of 2014. And less than 24 hours after my dad was buried, my mom passed away unexpectedly. And, you're not prepared, no matter how old you are, to lose your parents and to have to go through everything that goes along with that. I was going back and forth every weekend for months because I had to clean out the house, and, we don't live in a big place, and there was so much that I couldn't take, and, trying to make the best decision of what am I gonna want of my mom's, like, what am I one day gonna want to have, and, it's just a very stressful time, and, it's not like it happened in 2014 and then I was done dealing with it. It hits you at the craziest times. You want to pick up the phone and call your mom, and the first Halloween after she passed away, I broke down bawling in the Halloween aisle of Jewel because she loved Halloween, and it will come in waves, and even now, not only is it sad and hard, but I still have so much guilt for things that I should have done, and I wish I would have spent more time with my mom, and, you have all this stuff happening. I just decided at the end of 2016 that I'm not going to keep weighing in like this on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm going to keep that more private. I have to pull back some things from you guys and keep them private, and, I don't know if it was the right decision, but, there was goods and bads. I say a lot, I'm so sorry. There was good and bad to not weighing in.